Yeah, some mic stands.
Yeah, it's all good. It's solid.
Fuck. How was your trips anyway?
Good. Yeah, it was good.
Where
Yeah.
have you
Solid.
been? What's the latest?
So are we starting now?
Yeah, we
Oh,
just
okay.
start organically.
Yeah,
we
okay,
don't
sweet,
like
cool.
being like, hello.
Yeah, cool.
And we
Trips?
already had you on as well.
Yeah. Nah, trips have been good. This year's been crazy. It's been like a lot of travel. I could talk a lot, man. There's been a lot of things. Highs and lows, challenges, tests, initiations, rites of passage. It's been an interesting year, but net positive
Yeah,
across the board. Yeah.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
How was it performing overseas? Was it in the UK?
Yeah, I've had a few gigs overseas this year. Performed in the UK, Spain, Ibiza. Honestly, places that I've just been manifesting for a long time.
Yeah.
So being able to go over there and actually perform it was kind of surreal though. I was ready for it, but it felt like a dream when I was
Yeah.
doing it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did it all come about? Were they hit you up during the...
That's a good question. Honestly, this has been something that I've been manifesting for a very long time. And I've just had the vision for what I'm doing now for a very long time. So opportunities come up, I meet the right people, conversations happen, and then because I'm like constantly manifesting it, I'm just open to the opportunities when they come. So when they
yeah.
come, I can jump on the opportunity.
That's how manifestation works, eh? It's just like every little conversation is like these little stepping stones to it all just coming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
So what, so to manifest that, do you always just think about your end goal? Or always visualize for that time? Not the end goal, but like the end goal of that certain... Like, just say you had like 4 manifestations you're like trying to get to. If you talk to someone and they said something, does it like automatically ping like a vision that you want to come true?
Yeah. So I feel like for me personally, because I've been manifesting for like 10 plus years now. I started when I was a teenager because my mum got me into manifesting when I was just coming out of high school.
Wow.
So at first, when I first started, it was like have your outcome and then focus on it and then just visualize it and, just keep working towards it. Now I think over the years for me, it's gotten to a point where I've just been able to rely upon the power of manifestation so much that now it's like, it's not a wanting, it's like a having. It's like being in the state of having. Like I've
Yeah.
already got it. It's already happened. I just choose what I want. It's already happened. And then I just know that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And like the mental and energetic state of just being in that state of having it already, that just attracts it faster. So when the opportunity comes up, I'm like, oh, yep, I was expecting that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
But I'm not trying to force it.
Yeah.
I just like let it happen organically.
Yeah.
You know?
Having is so much stronger than wanting.
Yeah.
Or like trying to look for the signs or look for opportunity. Rather, it just happens and it was expected
Yeah.
because you're already there.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
we were talking about that the other day, like creating that when you're wanting something, it creates like an imaginary space between you and trying to get to that goal.
Yeah.
Or if you change it to like being that person and saying you already got it, you basically live in it. It's just like being a basketball player or anything like that. Like if you want to be in the NBA, you got to be training like an NBA player.
Yeah.
You can't be playing at the local park
Yeah.
thinking, what the hell? Why isn't it?
Yeah.
There's nothing happening. So you got to put that work in behind it as well.
Yeah.
So with all your manifestations and everything you do, is that all going towards all those goals? Or is your main goal like helping people?
So for me, when it comes to manifestation is the art and the science of consciously turning ideas and dreams into reality. So within the dream state, I break it down into 3 parts. The first part is like what I desire, which is more of like a egoic thing. It's like, which is not a bad thing.
What's
Yeah.
egoic?
Egoic
Like
is like,
ego.
it's more like an ego-driven
Oh,
desire.
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, I want to make heaps of money, or I want to drive this car, or I want to live in this house, or I want these like more materialistic, I want to reach this certain level of success. That's more desire-based, which is important
It's
because
strong. Desire is so strong.
the desire is literally what gives you that motivation to actually want to go out and create it and manifest it. But that's just like the first level. there's the desire, and then there's and this is something that I've only recently connected to over the last like 5 years. Because in my early 20s, it was very just desire based. It was like, I want money, I want this, I want that. But now, and I think this comes as a result of more of my own personal like healing and spiritual journey, is now the second level to that is impact. So it's not just about what can I just get for myself and what can I just take from the universe. It's how can I actually give, and what type of impact can I make through the influence that I'm building for myself.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're building a platform, utilizing social media, using your voice, creating content, building a brand, building a business, and actually increasing your level of influence into the world where you can actually reach millions of people, you start to see that, okay, I've got a lot of power, but with great power comes great responsibility. So
Yeah.
I could use my platform to spread a lot of bullshit and create a lot of negative ripple effects in the collective consciousness, or I can use it to actually elevate the consciousness of my community, my following, and humanity. You know,
Right.
so impact is like the second thing. And what I've learned about impact when it comes to manifestation is it's the next level of mastery, because manifestation is about tapping into the flow of abundance, right? You hear that word. It's like abundance is one of those key words, like those. It's one of those
Thrown around.
people throw around the word a lot, but when you think about abundance in numerology, you have the number 8, right? The number 8 represents abundance, because when you flip the 8 on the side, the 8 is the infinity sign, and infinity is about energy in, energy out, and a never-ending flow.
I didn't even know that.
Infinite energy. Well, yeah. Yeah. So an infinite flow of energy, when you look at that infinity sign, it represents energy going out, energy coming in. So the energy coming in, a lot of the time when we think about manifestation, it's like, okay, money. Like money's a thing that a lot of people are trying to manifest. But money coming in is just one half of the manifestation process. The energy going out is how you make that money, right?
Yeah.
So you can make money, you can make millions of dollars in millions of different ways, and not all good money is good money.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean?
So is it more like the impact changes and the money and the life you desire is more like a side effect of like creating good energy?
Yeah. So, and this is something that one of my mentors taught me, which is like, if you focus on income first, then you will do anything to make the income. Sometimes good
Dangerous.
things, sometimes bad things. Whereas if you focus on the impact first, then the income will become a byproduct. Because when you look at business or entrepreneurship, literally all you're doing is you're solving people's problems, and you're helping people. That's what business is. You're just creating solutions for people's problems through products and services. So when you're creating with the intention to actually help people and actually make a positive impact to support people in healing, inspiration, transformation, whatever the outcome is that you're leading people to, then you'll create like the energetic transfer that's taking place is you're actually adding positive energy into someone's life through service and impact. And then the money, and not just money, but the abundance that comes back to you, money, resources, opportunities. It's just, it's the law of reciprocation.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if that makes
I
sense.
understand, yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, so that in turn would obviously make you a better person and attract better things to come as well.
Yeah.
Putting money and desires aside, but I understand how you've got to start with that desire as well, because it is so strong.
Yeah, because you can be the opposite. You can, and I see a lot of people that like really in the spiritual kind of path, really like good heart, impact driven, but they don't have a good relationship with their desires. So they actually block the abundance from coming in, and they end up in this like giving all of their energy out to give to help people, but they're not open to receiving
Like
it.
they've stripped the ego so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and people have a negative perception of the ego. Like, I mean, we can't escape the ego because we're human beings and we have identities, and ego is just a psychological construct of our identity. But it's it can work for you or against you. You know, it can control you, and it can be negatively driven to the point where it creates chaos and disorder in your life, and that happens with most people. Or you can use it as a tool for positive. Just depends on how you use it.
Yeah,
Just
like
balance,
I use it sometimes, like when I notice that I'm making an impact with people, my ego will kick in and be like, fuck, I can do this for more people.
Yeah.
Like that's using it in like a positive way.
Yeah.
Where like sometimes you could be like, I can smash this guy here.
Yeah.
And then you walk into a room thinking you're the toughest in the room.
Yeah.
That's how I've been practicing using my ego for a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's funny how you said that, because I've noticed that like people that like do so much nice things and like, I don't know, you just meet people and you're like, whoa, this guy knows everything, or he's doing all of this stuff here, but he's actually got like nothing to show for it and not really like helping as much people as they could. How do can they even change out of it? Like how do they, because I know there's people stuck in that
But
motion.
maybe they want to be like that as well. You know, like
just turn into a hippie.
I think when you do, like what comes with stripping the ego is that whole lifestyle. They might not even desire that type of lifestyle in the first place. But yeah, I think some people strip it back because they just want to live like that.
Nothing to say.
Yeah. What's up, Ethlings? I just want to quickly interrupt this beautiful conversation we're having with Jessie to acknowledge our sponsors for this week's episode. Holistically You is a whole foods supplement brand that bring you nutrient-dense blends. They are proudly New Zealand owned and operated. Holistically You have 3 incredible products, obtaining some of the most beneficial ingredients that are lacking in most of our food today. The creator of Holistically You has taken the utmost care in sourcing these organic ingredients for their beautiful supplements, and we're so excited to be partnering with them. So their first blend I'm going to talk about is called Nature. A beautiful blend of nutrient-dense whole foods to help nourish you and your family. All of the ingredients have been freeze-dried to ensure maximum nutritional benefits. Contains no GMO ingredients, also no dairy, gluten, fillers, artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, or any other nasties. Next is their collagen. Collagen has been scientifically shown to improve skin hydration and elasticity and to promote hair and nail health. Our pure collagen peptides have been sustainably sourced and bottled here in New Zealand. Lastly, we're going to talk about Enhance, which is actually my favorite product from Holistically You. Our Enhance blend has been specifically created with your nourishment in mind. Using bioavailable whole foods, this blend can be used for the whole family to enhance nutrient intake. We've been using them for over a year now and I can't fault them. Couldn't recommend it more. If I was going to recommend a supplement, this would be it. Thank you very much, Holistically You, for sponsoring this episode. Now let's get back to this high-level conversation with Jessie.
We all have like blind spots in life, you know, and I think when you really tap into the manifestation power that we have, you realize that everything is like everything's limitless. Like you can do anything, you can create anything. And I think most people, they have limiting beliefs and like these like subconscious programs that create doubt in their mind around what's actually possible. So most people are living in this kind of state of disempowerment where they don't actually believe that they can do what they want to do. So sometimes it's easy, and I see this in the spiritual world a lot, it's easy to like opt out to like I don't need any of that type of lifestyle, but in deep down they're stressing out because they don't have money, or they don't have like a house, or like, you know, they don't have these basic things. So sometimes, not saying that it's bad, but when you realize like what you can actually do and what you can actually create with the power that you have, then there's almost like no excuses not to. It's like almost like a duty to use it for something, you know.
So true.
You know, so
a free tool, literally.
All of them, really. All of the spiritual tools. Like once I learned them, like obviously I've made a whole program out of it, because once you do learn it, you're like, what the hell? This is free. Free information to level your life up. Like all you gotta do is just learn it.
How do you stay inspired to keep those tools, like keep using those tools? Like sometimes for us, when we're teaching about things, we lose the inspiration to do it ourselves. And it can even go as far as to like getting ourselves into a rut, knowing the tools that can get us out, but somehow there's sometimes like a block there. to start practicing again,
Yeah,
say
yeah.
breath work or meditation.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll be like, I know that meditation will help me so much in my life right now. Like, why aren't I doing it? Why can't I just get through that block?
Yeah. I think it's different for everyone. But for me personally, it's the word embodiment comes to mind, of like embodying the person that I want to be. And I think for me personally, I've been on such a journey of going through so many tests and challenges and just being a shitty person. Like I've been a shitty person before. I've done so many bad things in my life. And I've had to deal with the repercussions of those bad things. You know, I've had to make mistakes, do bad things, hurt people. And I've always seen how that negatively impacts my family, my finances, my business, like everything. Like, because everything that happens within us ripples out into our entire life. So I've seen the worst of the worst in my life. So now it's almost like it's one of my top personal values is to make sure that I don't fall back into that.
Yeah,
and I keep my life pure. And I'm still not perfect. Like I still like mess up. I still make mistakes, but the mistakes that I make now compared to the mistakes that I made 10 years ago are way different. And it just becomes a value of mine of just like being a good person and just doing whatever I need to do. And also I think for me, like, and it's probably the same as you guys as well, being in a position where you're coaching others, where people look at you as almost like a role model, like a leader. Leadership isn't necessarily about like what you tell people to do or what you say to do. It's very much about how you lead by example and the values and the virtues and the principles that you demonstrate through your actions.
Yeah.
not necessarily just the things that you say.
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
where it's like what you're actually doing. So
Yeah, hard out. Yeah, leading by examples, it gets hard sometimes.
it's a tough
eh?
one. That's tough.
It
Not
gets
easy.
hard because you're like,
Yeah.
especially when I have like little road rage moments, where I just feel like I can road rage on someone, but I'm just like,
Yeah.
I got to a school the other day and I was just, my energy was off. And one of the kids was like, oh, fuck, what happened? And I was like, I was just being honest with like the class and I was like, fuck, I just had a little road rage. And they were like, what? Do you road rage? And I was like, fuck, bro, I'm human. Like,
Yeah.
but I didn't do what I used to do. I just controlled myself and brought myself back. But yeah, of course I still snap.
Yeah.
Things like that. So like trying to lead by example all the time. Sometimes it's best to tell the truth to people as well.
Oh yeah.
So they can see how you got out of that situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so true.
Instead of just
100%.
being like, oh, I'm not going to deal with this. at
Yeah.
all." Like yesterday, this is a random ass story. I forgot to tell you. So I'll put up a post on like the local pages to get like boxing clients over this time. And this one person messaged and was like, hey, I'm having trouble messaging you. I was like, all good. Added them. And then they kept trying to video call me and I was picking the kids up from kindy and I was like, what the are you trying to video? And they're like, I just want to sort out like times for boxing and that. And I was like, what the fuck? I don't even know you. Why are you video calling me? And then I finally answered it. And this guy was fucking playing with his thing. Yeah, and I was like, I exited off and I read out this fucking message and I was like, you piece of shit, like I'll fucking knock you out if I don't catch you, cunt. Like, wrote this big message out.
How did you not tell me
I
this?
fully forgot. And I was like, wrote this big message out. And then I was like, actually, like, fuck, I can just block him.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's growth, bro.
Not his growth, but.
Wow. That's crack.
Yeah, and I was
that
like,
is just...
I was like, what the fuck? And like, typed this whole thing
not
out.
expect you to say that.
Yeah. I forgot to tell you because then I picked the kids up from kindy and then, it's just kind of just the kids.
Full, yeah.
But yeah, I was like just about to send this message, like stepping this random ass fucking cunt out. And then I just backspaced it and just blocked them and it was just like, fuck, I actually don't need to like deal with that
That
shit.
is so
Yeah.
good.
That's crazy.
Yeah, just doing shit like that. It's like trying to better yourself when no one's looking, eh?
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing.
Yeah, it is.
No, it is.
Yeah.
But I always have this thing of like the universe, God, it's always watching. You know? So if I'm saying this stuff on social media or to my clients, but then in the background I'm actually like not actually practicing what I preach, then that's like acting out of integrity.
Yeah.
You know, so and I think that all of those little actions and deeds, they they weigh up.
Yeah,
They weigh up over time.
Yeah, hard. So if you like preach about something online, and then you end up doing like the opposite thing, do you ever feel bad and feel like you need to like tell someone about it, or do you just move on and like keep that to yourself? Does that dig at you or anything?
Yeah, I don't think you have to tell people unless it's like in a relevant situation. I think sometimes keeping things to yourself is actually a good thing because I'm aware of like energy leaks, and sometimes if you like tell too much, it's just like sometimes people that might not have your best interest in heart can like you take that the wrong way, or like people that like their judgments and that kind of stuff. So I usually will just take self accountability and just learn from it, which is like pretty much what you have to do, which is, I think, especially in leadership, you just have to constantly just be taking self accountability. But for me, if it's like with like clients and stuff, like if because I have a big community of clients that I work with. So if I'm going through personal struggles and challenges, then I will usually tell my clients because I know that they're also going through it as well. And if I'm trying to portray this image of like I'm perfect and I've got everything figured out and I'm always on point, then that's also dishonest because it's like, and it creates this unrealistic expectation for them.
Yeah.
So if they're going through stuff and they think that I'm this perfect person, then they're going to feel like, oh, I shouldn't be going through this. And then they start getting hard on themselves and they start falling into negative spirals. So I think for me, like leadership is about being like humility and honesty and transparency sometimes.
Relatable way.
And and if there is a need to share a lesson, then making sure it's like relevant to them so that they can also like learn through the process as well. Because sometimes they don't learn about just like what we're coaching them. They learn by how we deal with challenges and adversities. How we handle situations.
Yeah, that's mean. Do you know how you went overseas and stuff like that? Were those things that you planned, or was that those like big shows you went to? Was that your shows, or were you just invited to?
Some of them. So we've been traveling this year for a lot of things. So we run in our business. We run our own like retreats and like events. So some of them are our own events that we actually planned and hosted ourselves, and then some of them were just events that I got invited to be a part of. Yeah.
And did you, because you got a new album out, eh?
Yeah.
Did you your album planned ready for these events so you could go perform there?
Yeah.
Or were you just kind of getting shit together and then you were like, oh fuck, I can perform it here?
Yeah, good question. So I actually have the album. It hasn't actually released yet. It's in the process of being released now. Like it's going to be released.
Can you tell us the name of it or anything?
Yeah. So the album's called Heal the Hood.
Oh yeah.
And it's basically it's a 11-track album that just shares the stories of growing up in the hood and going through my own journey of like getting involved with like going down the negative path in life, making a lot of mistakes, journeys through like mental health, addictions, crime, but then also finding healing and finding like my own spirituality through that journey. And then kind of the full circle moment of coming back into these like environments where I'm able to come back as this new version of myself and bring more light into these communities and stuff like
that's
that.
cool.
So that's the project, the mission behind the project. But yeah, the album itself was just inspired by, well, firstly, just like my upbringing and like everything that I've had to go through, but then also just witnessing all the things that are happening in our communities in our country, and also like having a lot of contacts and connections with people, clients, friends, family members that are also going through similar struggles. That I've had to go through. So yeah, that's what inspired the project there.
Even just a lot of like just how violence is getting more and more rapid.
Yep.
Especially in the areas that we grew up in.
Yep.
Even just losing some of our friends over the years and things like that. So is that all type of stuff that's inspired you to make an album like this?
Yes, definitely, bro. Because for me, over the last few years, I've lost 6 friends.
Whoa.
6 friends to different things: murder, suicide, just random health issues, mental health issues, and I've been in situations where I've almost lost my life multiple times. I've been in situations where I've been like, jumped by like 20 dudes.
Yeah.
I've literally had 20 dudes like just like stomping on me in the city. And I've had situations in my life where, people pull guns on you and weapons on you. I've had situations where I've wanted to commit suicide myself, and had like real dark mental health issues and addiction problems and stuff, So I've had to go through all of those personal tests myself. And I've also lost friends that didn't win those fights. They lost those battles and lost their life in the process. So witnessing all of that, seeing all the stuff that's happening in our communities. I'm also just like a very naturally empathetic person, so I feel a lot. So I internally process a lot of the things that I personally go through, and I also see, and yeah, all of that led me to, like we were saying before, just having I've got a platform that I can reach millions of people. I have a passion for making music and creating content and sharing messages. So I thought, what better way to, contribute positively to society than to create an album that can actually reach some of these kids that might be raised in these environments like we were, that don't have that positive role model or don't have that positive message. Because in the hip hop industry, there's not a lot of that. I mean, there's more coming out now, but the hip hop industry over the last 10, 20 years has been heavily, like predominantly focused around a lot of negative music and negative messaging, which fuels a lot of these problems.
Definitely.
So.
Yeah, I even got like a playlist just in saying that. Like, it is all negative out coming from all those places. And it's like, it's like they have to rap about like prescription drugs and money, sex, all those things just so they can get heard.
Yeah.
It's like if you play if a different musician comes up and wants to do something about positive things, like the music label will be like, oh, no way. But if you're rapping about drugs and fucking all that shit, they'll blast your music all through the radio.
Yeah, it's because all these industries are controlled and orchestrated in that way. So like,
by the Jews, no.
Like all the main industries, like the music industry, like the entertainment industry, like all the core parts of society. Like if you look at society as a whole, you have these core sectors of society: entertainment, music, social media, politics, religion, economics. All these core areas are the main core areas that influence the collective consciousness, because these are the main channels of information. Yeah. And all the information that comes through these multiple channels is what feeds into our consciousness and programs us. So all of these sectors of society are all orchestrated and systemized in a specific way to keep us in these disempowered, like lower vibrational states of like fear and conflict and division. And that's why the music, a lot of the music industry, a lot of the music that does get pushed is negative, and it does have that real low vibrational energy behind it that is just fueled by profit, because the industries know that these are the things that, number one, make money, number two, creates division and it keeps people fighting and it keeps people divided, and number three, keeps people in this disempowered state where they don't actually know what they are, who they are, how powerful they are, what they could do in their life.
Yeah, true.
And that's why you see so many people just numbing themselves with drugs and alcohol and fighting each other and just living in these like real low vibrational states of fear and anger and just like resentment, jealousy, envy. They're just in these real low vibrational states, and then they just create this like negative reality around them because they're always in this negative mindset, and they're stuck in it.
True.
It's like the Matrix, bro. They're stuck in it.
That makes me think about Nipsey Hussle, because he was almost like a journey like that. If you listen to his earlier music, it's about like drugs, like all that gang type of shit. And then as he gets more mature and gets a bit better, he starts rapping about manifestations, affirmations, positive words, healing the hood basically. And then he gets whacked.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
like he's disrupting the way that they want the momentum to go.
And you see that with a lot of artists, bro. He was one of them, but there was a lot of the artists that got whacked. You know, in the last 10, 20 years, you see a lot of artists that come out, artists, celebrities, people that are coming out and talking about some of these things that go on behind the scenes. And those are usually the people that get killed off. You know, those are the people that, because they're speaking the truth about what's going on.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like right now, we're living in an age where we're living in an age of awakening, where there's more light coming to the darkness, in the sense that all of these old kind of systems and these like negative paradigms in all these different industries in the world, people are becoming aware of them. It's not just like a conspiracy theory anymore. It's like, now we can see it. Like we can see all the allegations against P. Diddy. Like we see the videos, we see all the people coming out talking about like the trafficking, and like it's not like taboo anymore. And it's going to continue to. I saw this back in 2019. I had a prophecy, and I saw that over the next, between the years 2020 and 2030 was going to be the years where everything comes up. All the shit that's actually going on in the world, it comes to light. And yeah, you can see that happening now with like everything that's happening politically and like religions. You see what's happening like all the wars, music industry.
Even the food industry with what is it, Bobby Kennedy, how he's like openly talks about what the pharmaceutical company does.
Yeah. And do you know how he started?
Who,
Bobby Kennedy? Is he the one with Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah, he started doing it with like environmental stuff, like the damaging effects that mercury has on the
planet.
Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's like every single aspect that is the most corrupt is all coming
Coming to light. Exactly. But with that is like, it's not easy. And that's on a macro level and a micro level. Because when I look at the world, I see things through like a metaphysical lens, in the sense that everything's connected. And there's like these seasons and cycles and patterns of consciousness taking place. And this is happening on a macro level, in the sense that all the shit that's been buried, you know, in the dark is coming to light. But it's also representative on the micro level, on an individual level, happens within our own personal journeys. You know, so all our own personal shit comes up during these times. You know, all of our own shadows come up to have to be addressed and to be looked at. Our negative aspects of ourselves. You know, we have to, and like what we were talking about before, like when we have these like old patterns or these old behaviors or these old traumatic responses or whatever the case may be, they come up to be looked at. And whether we're looking at the macro, bless you, whether we're looking at the macro level on the world stage or a micro level on an individual stage, the process of becoming aware of the darkness is not an easy process. It's like very uncomfortable, because you have to confront the darker aspects of reality, the more evil, sinister aspects of reality, and you also have to confront the more darker aspects of yourself, which is like the most confronting, but also the most liberating, if you can, you know, stay true through it.
Why'd you laugh before?
Because of what we're going through.
Yeah,
like, you know, I would say this is like not the toughest time of our relationship. I would say this is the toughest time of our like healed version of our relationship, maybe. You know, so I think because we were very into our masculine and feminine when there was the 2 kids, and now that there's 3, it's just such a different balance. And also that I'm bringing in an income as well. We haven't really had the proper time to like sit down and discuss our new roles and how we look as a family of 5 now. So I think that's the disturbance, but also it just makes sense with what's going on in the world, that there are a lot of things coming up.
Yeah, and especially because I'm doing a different job now as well. So my income's dropped. You're making income.
Yeah.
I've got another baby. Like we're trying to navigate our new positions.
Yeah, definitely. With I guess we couldn't talk about masculinity and that whole balance.
Yeah, that's a very powerful conversation, and I think that again, macro, micro, it's a thing that's happening in the world right now, and also within relationships, and it's a part of, I feel like what you're sharing about the relationship lessons is it's number one, it's a necessary part of relationships because I've gone through the same things, of going through the same things as well, like learning about like our roles. There's like the societal expectations of what it means to be a man and be a woman, but then there's also like the energetic dynamics of like the feminine energy and the masculine energy, which we both, men and women, have within themselves, you know. And I think just the world that we live in has been very disconnected from those energies, in the sense that we're very like a lot of people are very imbalanced, you know, energetically.
Yeah.
And that's why there are a lot of issues in the world. There are a lot of issues in relationships, and there's also a lot of mental health issues because men don't know how to be men or know what it even means to be a man. So there's that toxic masculinity which comes out, which is really not toxic. It's just a lack of masculinity, you know, because real true masculinity is about being that provider, being that grounded energy, being the protector, but also providing that level of reassurance and decisiveness of being able to lead the way of what's the right step to take. That self-accountability that we were talking about before, which doesn't mean being perfect, but it means about like learning and from every single decision that you make, and just having decisiveness in life. I think that's a very powerful masculine trait. And I feel like a lot of men don't have those traits now. So they've like, I was learning about this thing recently, that a lot of men and women, they haven't actually matured out of the child phase. So one of the things that we lack in modern society, which indigenous tribal societies have maintained, is rites of passage and initiations. So like in the Maori culture, for example, we have a rites of passage, like at stages of your life. When you're going from being a boy to a teenager to a man, you're going through those like puberty cycles, and you're maturing. There's traditional initiations that take place in the tribal cultures where you have to prepare yourself to become a man. Like you have to go through tests and trials and initiations. You have to go out on the vision quest. You have to learn how to hunt for yourself, so that you can develop the character traits and mature yourself mentally to actually be the man in tribal society, so that you can be the protector, provider, the hunter, the warrior, the chief, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And in Western culture, that's been completely disconnected. So there's no rites of passage. So
It would be especially here because I feel like as a Pākehā, like I don't really have any culture where I feel like something's been traditionally like handed down or anything like that. Like we're very much still kind of like expats, like here.
Yeah, and I can relate because I've got I'm half, so I've got on my father's side is Maori, and my mum's side is Pākehā, European, you know, and I've got Pākehā ancestors. I've got colonial ancestors on my Maori side as well, which is a whole story that we could maybe get into. But so like I've had to look at my whakapapa, my like my ancestral lineages on both indigenous and non-indigenous sides, and learn from both of those family lines. And Western culture as a whole is just completely disconnected from the natural energetic rhythms of nature, because they were so driven by that colonial mindset of just like power, control, conquering. That was like what was driving them. Whereas the indigenous side was more live in harmony with the land, you know, be a part of the cycle of life, tribal culture, family, community connection. So that's why in Western civilization you see so much disconnection, and that's why we see it in like family homes and stuff, because we haven't been actually guided through into maturity. And I've had to learn this, and I'm not speaking down on anyone. I've had to learn this personally because like I was one of those kids that didn't get taught how to be a man. So I was like in my 20s, and I was still acting like a kid, you know, and that created a lot of problems in my life.
Still acting like a kid now. No, but that's so true. That
It is.
that whole thing like makes sense. 'Cause I feel like I'm going through that as well. Like I never got taught. I thought being a man was like being able to stand up for your boys and
Yeah.
being able to like
But
protect.
it's the same with like migrating countries and stuff. Like your parents weren't surrounded by their, you know,
Yeah.
normal surroundings like family and just like connections to where they were from. And I don't know, they probably didn't carry things on that maybe your dad was taught.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
So
It's
that's
so hard.
definitely something now that I want to be implementing with Tommy.
Yeah.
Probably when he hits certain ages, like
Yeah.
10, 15,
Yeah.
20,
Exactly.
set up something for...
Because we talk about these things all the time. Like a lot of the things that annoys me about him is just stuff. Like I can't believe he's just been like wandering through his life, just, you know, just very chill about things.
Yeah, yeah.
Or just like, you know, he'll never have his wallet on him. He just, you know, he doesn't learn.
I don't
certain
learn
things.
anything because literally
Just
my
like
mum...
life skills.
I'm not
basically.
blaming this on my mum as well. I love her. She's my favorite person in the world. But I'm just saying that she done everything for me and my brother.
Yeah, yeah.
Like cleaned
She
our
was-
rooms,
yeah.
made us food. Like we never...
I was
She
the
was
same. I was
a
the
single
same.
mum
Yeah.
with no family here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got...
So
yeah.
she literally did it
Just did
on
everything.
her own.
Yeah, she did it on her own. And
Yeah.
like, we literally didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And then when it was time to like be older, like me and my best friend were
Like, do your
"Fuck,
washing?"
should we get up? No. Like when it, like me and my best friend were like, oh, should we like go move into our own house? I was like, yeah, but really, in the background, I was like, what does that even mean? Like, what the fuck am I gonna do? Like, and when I moved in with him, like we had our own place, and my room was messy all the time. Like he was like, bro, clean your shit. Like what the hell? And
He
I was
would just like cook and leave every single thing. And
yeah, and I was
he
like,
wouldn't even think that other people live here. You know, he had
Yeah,
two
yeah.
flatmates and
Yeah.
everyone was like, what the fuck?
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah. That's
So, like-
exactly the same as me, bro.
So what you just said before was like blowing my mind.
Yeah.
I was just like, fuck, that
Yeah.
is
It's
definitely
just
what.
something we've been talking about so much lately.
Yeah, I know, but it's something that the community as a whole, like everyone is missing.
No, honestly, people literally will go into their 30s, 40s, and 50s still acting like kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like, and you'll see that. You'll see that like everywhere now.
And
There's a-
that's not even touching on the emotional maturity of things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's part of it. Like
Yeah.
maturity is, yeah, it's physical maturity, like going through the physical changes, but it's also mentally, you know, like developing the parts of the brain that are responsible for reason and like self reliance and independence and like all these things that we're talking about. But then there's the emotional maturity, which is I think one of the biggest things that I see in today's modern world that people are completely fucked up. It's
Yeah.
like people don't know how to manage their emotions. They don't understand their emotions, and we're so disconnected from the natural order of life that so many people just heavily over medicate and sedate themselves
Yeah.
because they can't manage their emotions.
Yeah.
And that's why there's like such a mental health epidemic. And
Yeah, and it does feel like sometimes, like, when people say they have anxiety and they have depression, I feel like sometimes we might just have feelings of anxiety and have feelings of depression and we don't know how to manage it and we just label ourselves and then shove these pills down our throat. And then it almost becomes like an online trend and now everyone's got ADHD and that's the new trend, you know? It's like
yeah.
maybe we just haven't been taught how to manage emotions properly.
Yeah, very true. We haven't got taught how to manage emotions because again, in Western world, the way like we're talking about this before, there's like all these different like sectors of society that influence consciousness, right? And one of those sectors is the medical healthcare system, right?
Yeah.
So the medical healthcare system, although there are benefits of it, like I'm not anti-medicine or anything like that, but there's times and places for it. But because that's been the like when we're raised in Western culture, we look at the medical system as the main influence
Yeah.
of health,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the way that we've been taught about emotions is like they're like if you feel these feelings like depression, for example, which is such a normal part of life, like you have
Yeah.
to go through negative emotions. Automatically we see that as like depression as like a psychological or like issue, like we've got like some sort of problem that we need to medicate. And that becomes really dangerous because then people are raised to think, oh, these emotions are bad. I shouldn't feel
Yeah.
these. And if I'm feeling this, it's a bad thing and I need to go take these pills or whatever. And that's where people get messed up because the emotions aren't bad. They're a necessary part of the human experience. And in indigenous and Eastern cultures, emotions are a part of the spiritual learning process of like getting to understand yourself, and also emotions are a guidance system, you know, to teach you about life and to teach you about empathy and compassion, and they're
And
things.
probably intuition.
Intuition, exactly.
It's an
They
alarm system, eh?
yeah, and they need to, and sometimes negative emotions happen as a result of negative experiences, like traumatic experiences, and we have to learn how to heal from those, like actually heal the root cause.
Yeah.
But so many people have traumatic experiences, and because they've been conditioned to think of these emotions as negative, as like the problem, they never go to the root cause of where the emotions are coming from, which is usually these deeper issues that are systemic, intergenerational, or, you know, things that we've experienced in our life, you know. So yeah, there's a lot to it, but
It's a very layered subject, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to the generational trauma, sometimes I think, is it worth getting into? Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes I think healing in itself can be a little bit addictive.
Yeah.
And it's like, where do you stop and just kind of like live in the present time? And yeah, it's something that I've avoided just for like, I don't have time, or like, where is this going to lead me and when does it end? And, you know,
Yeah.
is there like, is it just a huge hole that is never ending?
That's a great question. That's a very deep question. I don't have all the answers to that, but I can speak on my perspective and my understanding is that you're right in the sense that we can get addicted to the healing journey, just like we can get addicted to the personal development journey of always just
And like identify with it?
yeah, diving into all these things. Healing, when we look at the word healing, understanding what healing actually is important, because healing is not like in the Western world, healing is looked at through the lens a lot of the time through the lens of like therapy, like cognitive talk based therapy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think it's an important part of the healing process to talk about your
Yeah.
feelings and to talk about what you went through. That's a part of the process. But the thing about healing is there's the cognitive side, but a lot of Western practices neglect the somatic side, which is the fact that healing is not just things in your mind; it's actually emotions that are stored in the body, you know, through the actual body. So a lot of Western practices, they look at talk therapy, medications to cognitively work through healing. But what that can often do is it can lead to this like loop cycle where we're just always, we never change the actual perspective of the trauma or whatever it is, and we don't actually change the physiological emotional state, because emotions are stored in the body. So if you have emotions of fear and grief as a result of something that you went through in your life, if you don't work through the somatic process of like actually shifting the emotions and changing the energetic state within your body, you can just keep stuck in that cycle and you don't actually get out of like that's not healing. That's just perpetuating a cycle. Whereas actual healing, when you look into the ancient art of what healing actually is, healing is the transmutation or the transformation of one energy from a negative state into a positive state. So it's transmuting negative emotion into a positive emotion, or
Right.
transmuting a negative belief system
Yeah.
into a positive belief system.
So the energy stays there. It's more just a shift of perception.
Shift of perception, but also a shift of vibrational state.
Yeah.
So healing has been portrayed to us, especially when it comes to mental health and emotional health and well-being. Healing is very much treated with medications and therapy, right? Those are like the two main things that we work through when it comes to healing. And there are times and places for those things. I don't think they're bad, but I think we overly rely upon these. And what these things do is they often almost like a band-aid for a much deeper core issue. And especially when it comes to cognitive talk-based therapy, we can talk about the things that we might have gone through, the challenges that we experience in life, the traumas that we've gone through, and we can talk about it. But healing is not just a cognitive process, it's also a physical, emotional process, and emotions are stored within the body. So a lot of Western healing practices neglect the somatic process of healing, which is like processing the emotions that are stored in the body. So if you go through something in your life where, like for me, I had abandonment issues that created anger. My father left when I was young, and when he left, I had this anger and this grief that I like, these emotions that were stuck in my body. So when I was older, because I hadn't processed those emotions, whenever someone would leave or in a way that my father left, kind of repeating that same sort of pattern, it would trigger those same emotions and the emotions would come up. So I would default into these emotional responses because I hadn't actually processed them. So it was like I was stuck in this like loop cycle, right? And this is what a lot of people, they get stuck in these like emotional loop cycles where they haven't actually released the emotions from their body, and the triggers that come up in our life, they just trigger these same emotions, so the same feelings. So that's why because we don't go to the core issue of the problem, we kind of mask it with these like bandages, which is like the medications and stuff, which kind of suppress the emotions and like keep us in almost like a sedated state, but don't actually deal with the problem. So healing, when we're looking at like from more of through the lens of an indigenous perspective or an Eastern perspective or more of a spiritual perspective, healing is the actual transmutation and the transformation of a negative psychological, emotional, or spiritual state into the opposite. So transmuting or transforming a negative emotion into a positive emotion, or a negative mindset into a positive mindset, or a negative energy into a positive energy. That's when we start going into like ancient healing practices, when we start talking about like alchemy. You know, alchemy is the art of transmutation. So when it comes to healing, true healing is being able to recognize whatever's coming up, if it's psychological issues, if it's mental issues, if it's emotions coming up, old traumas that are coming up. Actual healing is being able to, number one, be aware of what it is. So it's like, okay, I've got these emotions coming up right now, and this is the same emotion that's been coming up throughout my whole life. So awareness is the first key, but then it's actually processing the emotion, which a lot of people don't understand. And this is a part coming back to that emotional maturity conversation. A lot of people don't understand what processing emotions mean. So processing emotions is feeling it and actually releasing it.
Yeah.
So expressing it outwardly. And that can be done in multiple different ways, and there's different therapeutic ways of doing that. But when you're expressing emotion and processing emotions, through that process is where the transmutation takes place. So for me, breath work has always been a big tool for me to transmute emotions, because it would allow me to go into the emotion, feel it, process it, release it through crying, to be able to hold space for yourself as it's coming up. Holding space means being able to sit with it without judgment.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when emotions come up or we have to confront aspects of ourselves, it can be extremely like triggering and confronting. So it allows us to go into a state of just accepting it, and there may be elements of like forgiveness that has to come in, like forgiving ourselves or forgiving other people, or like kind of just like clearing the negative energy around certain things. and then the emotional release, which can come in different forms,
Right.
crying, yelling, or
I feel like that's maybe the part that I'm missing, because just through my own journey, I've felt that the acceptance and forgiveness has been my biggest thing for.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like you, like the abandonment issues from my mum.
yeah,
So like I feel, and even for my current relationship with my dad, like just accepting people and forgiving who they are without them saying sorry even.
yeah, exactly.
But do I still need to like release that?
So I feel like there's a couple of parts to it. I relate to that heavy because that was exactly my journey with my father as well. Like I had a
Yeah.
really negative relationship with my father. And I think in order to accept and forgive, like we can understand that forgiveness is important. Like we can hear that concept and be like, yeah, that makes sense. I need to forgive. But then there's the actual genuine feeling behind like how you're actually feeling within that might not match to forgiveness. Even though you might not know it's the right thing, there might be a like part of you that's like angry.
Yeah.
So like for me, I knew that I needed to forgive my father. I knew that was the right thing to do, but that didn't take away from the anger that I felt within my body. You
Yeah.
know, the anger that I felt within my body was real, and that was an emotion that I was feeling, and that was the emotion that needed to be processed through the healing journey, right? So there's the emotional transmutation, which comes with like what emotions come up when we think about these issues. But in order to actually accept someone and forgive someone, one of the missing pieces is understanding. So understanding
Yeah.
why, and this is where the intergenerational stuff comes in, because when I look back to my father, for example, or even my mother, because I had negative relationships with both of them, I had this like anger towards both of them, right? And in order for me to actually forgive them, I had to step outside of my own ego, which was my own like victim mentality of like, you
Yeah.
did this to me and you did that, and like real like in the victim mentality. I had to be able to transcend that, and I had to be able to put myself fully in their shoes and go back throughout their life and actually understand their journey as to why they are that way.
Yeah.
And once I was able to come to that understanding of, okay, he's like this because of whatever he went through, and that goes generations back,
Yeah.
because this is like how things are passed down through the generations,
Yeah.
because no one actually stops to look at it and like
Yeah.
confront it and deal with it. They just go on with their life and just pass it on.
Yeah, I don't think you can get to that acceptance and forgiveness without the understanding.
Yeah.
I feel like that's step one,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's really hard
Yeah.
to get to.
Yeah. Because it's hard to get to, because you have to be able to break out of the victim mindset.
Yeah,
And it's hard to break out of the victim mindset, especially if the victim mentality has been justified through pain and through hurt. Because if someone's actually hurt you, then there's that part of you that doesn't want to understand them.
Yeah.
Because you're
Yeah.
fighting to protect your hurtness, which is justified because it was
Especially
painful.
with like the generations before us, they don't share why they did the things they did.
Yeah.
Like one thing I love that my parents did, that they didn't talk shit about each other to us kids. Like even though my mum left, my dad never said like fuck your mum or like, you know,
yeah.
it was like just she just did what she had to do, or she's doing the best she can with the tools she has,
Yep.
or, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
and that I think led me to like asking what happened and asking why, which is better because then there's no assumption
Yeah.
and you can really actually understand. Then you can accept and forgive.
And the understanding leads to compassion.
Yeah.
And that was what I had with my father, is like I had to do so much work on just trying to understand him, which was so difficult because there was a part of me that just wanted to like knock him out.
Yeah.
And I had to like go beyond that, and I had to be able to develop a level of compassion and empathy towards him, of like, you know, understanding his pain and understanding his like what he had to go through to act that way towards his son, or whatever the case may be. So those three pieces, like the understanding, the acceptance, the forgiveness, happens through the processing of the emotions, and that's why, more spiritual healing guides you through those aspects, and cognitive healing as well, but it guides you through the ability to have forgiveness and to actually bring love back into the love energy back in. And that's like when we look at the chakras, like the heart chakra is the energy center of love, like unconditional love, being able to have love for someone even if they hurt you. And that's where the real healing comes into play, because real healing is when you're actually able to take that dark trauma and take it through that process of releasing the emotional and energetic charge that's in the body, changing the psychological perspective and stories and belief systems that you create around it, but then also coming into that higher vibrational state of love and like
transmuting
and
it.
even gratitude. And if you can get to a state, and this is what I've learned, if you can get to a state of gratitude for the trauma, like you're actually grateful that it happened, which is like really difficult to get to. But if you can get to that state of gratitude of like, oh, wow, thank you so much, God, universe, for giving me this trauma to heal through. And like, I'm grateful because it's led me to learning all of these lessons about myself and it's
breaking a cycle.
And it's led me to this place of deeper love and compassion, which then you can pass on to your children, and then that's when you break the chains.
Yeah, and then you see that's part of your
so
journey.
True. I don't think I've ever practiced gratitude towards any of it, so that's really cool.
It's tough. It's tough because it brings stuff up. It brings up the hurt. It brings up the parts of you that doesn't want to accept it.
I think that like without knowing it, I would be grateful for it, because I do like look at my kids and think like I'm doing such a different job parenting than my parents did. But I'm glad. Like I always say, I know what not to do in some situations. Not saying they were terrible parents, but like there's definitely lessons there, and I'm grateful that I've learned what not to do.
Yeah.
And I think we do like a state of that though when you're grateful for like errors that happen in your life. And then in hindsight you see it and you're like, oh fuck. Makes you grateful that because now this has happened here. Like even with one of my clients, remember I rang you one time and said I needed help. And I was like, I don't know if I could do it. But you were like, just do it, bro. Just run your program. Done it. And then it changed my path that I'm on now. So like those little things we use it for. But yeah, like she said before, I've never really used it for like any of the heavy trauma that's happened in my life.
And just like intentional gratitude.
Yeah. Like these things that we're talking about, like I had to learn these just through my personal healing journey, and like for me, I had different methods of doing that. Plant medicine was a big part of it. Breath work was a big part of it. Energy healing was a big part of it. Therapy was a big part of it. So all of these different things led me to these different conclusions, and I'm still working through it. But to come back to the question that you asked around, is it like an ever-ending thing? I think there's layers and levels to it, and I think healing comes in cycles. I was sharing this with a client this morning. I feel like throughout our life, we go through these seasons where, like for me personally, this last season of these last 3 months of us filming this now has been a season of shit coming up to confront and to heal through and deal with. And all of that stuff that's come up, it wasn't the first time I had to confront it. And there was times in the past where I thought I had healed from it and I had like overcome it, but then it had come back in a different way, in a different layer, and different level to it. So I do feel like the healing journey is just a necessary part of personal evolution. Like it's just something that when you start to understand the process and practice it throughout life, it just becomes a habit almost. It's like if something comes up, transmute it, move on, and then you elevate. And I feel like whenever you go through big shifts in life, like if you're about to go to a next level in your career or financially or family wise, like more kids, getting married, like investing into bigger properties or whatever the next level is that you're working towards in life, there will be almost like these tests that will come up that will test you before you go to that next level.
Yeah.
And that's where often the healing work has to be done.
Yeah.
And if you don't do the healing work, then you stay stuck in the old level.
Hard out. And that's what I say. That's what I say to my clients as well. Like when I try and explain it to them, I have to explain it as a video game.
Yeah.
So if you play a video game and you get to the end level and there's their boss, you have to beat them to go to the next level. But then as soon as you go to the next level, you're like, oh, this is easy. Because it's easy at the start. But then when you're ready to level up again, you're going to verse another boss.
Yeah.
So like it just keeps happening and happening. So like when they try and ask me like, is this going to be hard? I'm like, it's hard forever.
Yeah.
Like it's literally, you're just a constant
New levels,
leveling
new
up all the time. Unless you want to just be comfortable and just stay on that one level. But if you keep challenging yourself, you're
Never
always going to
evolve.
have those things keep coming up.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
I want to shift the conversation
Mm.
to what is going on in our country right now.
Yeah.
I would love to educate myself. I've been trying to do it a little bit, but you're such a good speaker and really easy to understand. I would love to hear.
My perspective.
Yeah.
And what's going on. 'Cause
Yeah.
I
What
don't,
is
like,
Yeah, a lot of people, don't know what's going
on.
on.
Yeah, yeah. So you're talking about like the situation with like the Māori and the crown
Yeah.
and stuff, like, the
The
Treaty of
treaty.
Waitangi.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning about the specifics and the politics and the law, the legal side of things. So I don't have all the answers for that. I can share what I know.
Yeah.
But I can also just share, like, I guess one of my gifts is being able to see the metaphysics behind things and the higher perspective of like what's happening collectively and energetically behind these types of things in
Right.
the world. So that's just the lens that I always see from. So like on a 3D like society level, obviously the Te Tiriti o Waitangi is a treaty between the Māori and the Crown that happened over 100 years ago that basically allowed for the two parties to coexist peacefully on this whenua, on this land, right? And recently, long story short, there's a bill that's been put forward to make changes in the treaty, which seems like it's going towards the direction of Māori losing cultural identity, sovereignty, indigenous rights.
Right.
So it goes way deeper than that, and I'm not too clued up on all of the like different political things because it goes really deep. The political rabbit hole goes deep and all the legalities and stuff like that. But on a surface level, that's what's been happening, which is why so many Maori people have been hikoing across the country to protest, to fight for their indigenous rights. So my perspective of this is there's a few different ways that I look at this. Number one, I'm very aware of politics being a system in society that is heavily founded upon divide and conquer. And I'm very aware of that taking place.
Yeah.
So I understand that when you look at society as a whole, the governments are a low level part of society and they answer to higher levels, so you've got the crown, but then the crown is not the highest level. You've got these bigger families and these bigger corporations, these bigger entities that actually run the whole world, so I understand the trickle down effect of what happens and how on this like lower level of society everyone's divided, and that's part of the whole plan. So I do see that perspective of divide and conquer, and it's happening all over the world, not just in New Zealand. Like you see in America, you got the politics, the left wing and the right wing. You see this in the wars around the world. There's all these there's always a narrative of you have to pick a side,
Yeah.
right? And whenever you have to pick a side, automatically you get dragged into an us versus them mentality. And that's how they control us, right? They control us through fear and division, because then when we're in a state of fear and division, we automatically see anyone that has a different perspective as us as the enemy, right? Or someone that we have to oppose against. And that's how they control us and like harness our energy and control us basically,
Yeah.
So I'm aware of that, and I do think that's what's happening in New Zealand right now as well. I feel like there is a divide and conquer tactic that's being played in the
Yeah.
governments, and that's why this is happening. Now, on the flip side, I think it's necessary. It's also a necessary part because it's the facts, like everything in the universe, when you look at it from like a universal level, everything's happening the way it's supposed to happen, and there's a purpose behind everything. So when I look at the spiritual, more energetic observation of what's happening, I see, like we were talking about before, of darkness coming to light or light coming to darkness. I see a darkness coming to light through these protests. And the darkness that is coming to light is the fact that for thousands of years there have been indigenous races and cultures that have been completely wiped out due to a colonial mindset that is driven through greed and control and power. And that's just a fact. It's like, it's not even an opinion. That's coming from someone that has ancestors that were English colonizers. Like I have English colonizer ancestors that came here and went to war with the Maori people. And I also have ancestors and tipuna that were Maori chiefs in my iwis, you know. So I have both perspectives in my own DNA. So when I speak about this, it's not like I'm just speaking the facts of the situation and also my own experience. And I try and take my own personal bias out of it as much as I possibly can, because I understand that it's so much bigger than just like us versus them, like they're right, they're wrong. There's always two sides of everything. But what I'm seeing is the reality is, you know, the crown has been colonizing the world for a long time, you know, and there's a lot of indigenous races that have lost their cultural identity because they were taken over. Yeah. They were conquered, you know? And the thing with the Maori people is the Maori people were one of the only indigenous races around the world that didn't cede their sovereignty. Yeah. Hence the reason for the treaty. They didn't give up their sovereignty, and they fought to the end, and that's why they had to create a peace treaty, because they're like, we're just never going to give up. We're just going to keep fighting. Yeah. True. Whereas a lot of indigenous races, they didn't have that mana or that power or that resilience, and they actually got taken over. And when you go to some of those different cultures, like you look at the Aborigine people in Australia, their cultural traditions and their cultural identity has been declining over time, because
it's so sad.
It's sad, and now you see these communities and they're living in poverty, mental health problems, addictions, disconnected from their own mana, their own spiritual power, their own knowledge, their own sacred traditions.
They've also never been taught to live how white people live. You know, it's often that their community just gets shut down because they want to like pillage the land, that their land is valuable there, and they've found something underground or whatever. It's really sad there. Yeah. Like when I lived there, I just couldn't stand it. And it just made me feel so lucky to be part of New Zealand. And now it just feels like we're going backwards, and it's almost embarrassing to be at the forefront of having a really peaceful country to now go into this where it's like, well, what the fuck are we doing? Like, why are we going backwards? Yeah. Because it feels like I'm living in Australia again, where like you could literally kill an Aboriginal up till almost the 70s, like I think 68, they banned it. And they only got an apology in 2011. Like at a football game, at an AFL game.
And you see, like, going deeper into that topic of like loss of cultural identity. Like for me, I try and stay away from the political side as much as possible, because I understand the trickery in politics, you know, and I see how people get like sucked into it, and I've seen how I get sucked into it sometimes. So that's why I always try and practice neutrality, so that I can just have a more intellectual understanding of like all the different perspectives, because it's important to understand all of it. But coming back to the cultural identity, like a good example is like my partner Sakula, she's over in Okinawa right now in Japan. So Okinawans, a lot of people don't know this, but Okinawans were actually their own race of people. Now Okinawa is an island off the coast of Japan. My Sakula's she has Okinawan blood within her, so she's half Japanese, quarter Okinawan. And the Okinawan race was an indigenous race that was colonized by Japan and then colonized by America. So their islands, it's a group of like 100+ islands. That region, they were once a thriving a group of tribes. They had their own sacred traditions. They had their own spirituality, their own religion. They had connection with the land. Like, they were indigenous people. The Japanese took over, colonized them, and then during World War II, there was a fight between United States and Japan, and they took over the land. So basically, what happened was the Okinawan culture got outlawed. So they weren't able to practice their sacred traditions. They weren't able to practice their religion. They had cultural tattoos, which my partner actually has on her hands. They're like sacred cultural tattoos that the women get. All of those tattoos were completely outlawed to the point where they would get locked up if they had the tattoos.
Wow.
Whoa.
So that's like an example of what happens when colonization completely overthrows cultural identity to the point where you go down a few generations. The generations now carry shame and guilt around their culture. They're afraid to speak about their culture, and they feel like they have to adapt into this new society, and they have to become Japanese, or they have to become American, or whatever the case may be, and they lose connection to that spiritual, that mana, which is like the spiritual power that was severed, and to the point where if you go even down another 3-5 generations from here, people may not even know who the Okinawans are. They could actually go completely die out, you know?
Wow.
So that's what can happen as a result of cultural identity being taken through this colonization. And colonization is an interesting topic because it happens in real sneaky and subtle ways, like what's happening in New Zealand right now. But the thing is with the Māori people, and this is why I think from a spiritual lens, this is all like such a powerful time to be here, is because there are so many cultures around the world that have been victims of this. You've got the Native Americans, you've got the Palestinians, the Israelites, you've got all these different cultures that have been affected by this. And the thing is, the superpowers that lead the colonization, bless you, the superpowers that do lead the colonization, they justify it. It's justifiable because it's, and I've seen this. Like, I put up a post yesterday or a few days ago, and it's gone viral. Right, it's about the hikoi that's happened. It's like almost at 1 million views.
Wow.
And it's really interesting because it's brought up all the indigenous people from around the world and non-indigenous people that stand with indigenous people, because there's a lot of Pākehā and non-indigenous people that don't agree with like the colonial mindset.
Yeah.
And it's brought all those people, and it's and that haka that happened in Parliament last week that's gone viral. It was like I saw that as like a global war cry. So like all the people around the world that were just like, that have been thinking and feeling this for like hundreds of years.
Yeah,
but
you could feel it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I got
I know.
goosebumps again thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because even I've seen a few Americans that have like been like, look what they're doing in New Zealand,
Yeah.
and look what's happening here in America. Like we can stand
Yeah.
up like they are. Look,
Yeah.
look how they're changing the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
it was the haka, and I was like, holy
Yeah.
shit.
And the reason why, because the reason why that happened is because the haka and the Māori people are deeply connected to their mana, and their mana is the spiritual power that has been passed down through tradition and through the generations. Something that a lot of cultures were disconnected from, like the Okinawans disconnected from their mana because it was outlawed. You know, so like when you outlaw your own spiritual connection to your ancestors, like
Yeah.
that leads down a negative path. So the haka is a expression of that spiritual power in full force and full embodiment. And because so many cultures have been completely disconnected from that power, when you see that in that setting in the parliament, what that did is it reawakened and reconnected people to that energy that exists within them, but they've
Yeah.
just been disconnected from. So again, politics aside, looking at it from a higher perspective, I think that this is what's happened here, is it's created this ripple effect, and it's created like a shift of awakening within the world of like, oh shit, we don't actually have to live society this way. And there is a way for cultures to peacefully coexist without and keep sovereignty of their culture without having to be conquered.
Yeah.
Because the colonial mindset is, we're going to conquer you because we're the stronger superpower, and this is for your good.
Yeah.
That's and it's really interesting because when my post went viral the other day, all the racists came out. It's crazy to see how many
It
racists
just
came out.
blows my
Yeah.
mind.
It's crazy.
That they. This is why I'm like, what are they trying to gain at this time? I feel like very soon, like all these racist old fucks
Yeah.
are gonna be dead.
Yeah.
There's not
Yeah.
many left. And then you go online and it's like David and John are like out here like fully being racist. I don't get it. Who are these people?
I know.
Yeah.
It's
Because
almost
I
like they're
don't know
fake accounts
one
as well.
person.
Yeah.
I
They're
don't know
trolls.
one person in my whole life that is like these men or women.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely the old age, and like you said, like between 2020 and 2030, a lot of them are going to be
Yeah, they're gonna be
they're
gone.
going to be gone.
So that's why I'm like, what is their intention? Because the thing is, like, when I even talk about this kind of stuff with Pākehā friends, like, we don't want it. You know, we love te reo. Like, we want this in our lives, and we want culture. A lot of us are screaming for culture.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I feel like I am Māori just by growing up here
Yeah.
and growing up where I grew up. You know, I feel it in me, you know?
Yeah.
And we want this. Like, I love that my kids are growing up learning te reo Māori. I love when they come home just from daycare and they're singing, like, waiata, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, like, what we have in New Zealand is rare, and what we've had for the last 100 so years is a rare thing, that we have two cultures, and the two cultures, original cultures, which was the English and the Maori people. We had the peaceful coexistence of two sovereign cultures that were able to coexist peacefully, which opened up the doorways for many other cultures to come into this country, or the Pacific Islanders, or the Asians, or the Indians, you know, all the Arabs that can come into the country. It gave the opportunity for peace,
Yeah.
but also to maintain that level of, like, sovereignty, because from the colonial mindset, it's like, we can have peace if you allow us to govern everything that you do, and you have to take on board all of our traditions and do what we say. And that's how colonizations worked. Like, that's how, like, races are literally wiped out, because the superpower comes, and they'll bring all their advanced technology, all their guns, and all their, you know, advanced stuff. And then the weaker people, the indigenous people, they don't have the power, so they just have to submit.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily creating true unity,
Yeah.
because what it's actually doing is it's actually a form of enslavement.
Yeah, it is.
You know, so that's how most of the world works, and that's why wars happen, because wars are like when someone's just like, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to let's scrap, let's fight, let's go to death, because they're just like, fuck this.
I just feel like it's so old school and uneducated and just very, like, just not up to date with us, the culture, because we stand with it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You know, I don't know anyone that agrees with getting rid of anything to do with Māori. I really don't.
Yeah.
Like, why are they trying to do this?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, they've
what
been
is
trying to
the
do it for years, eh?
gain? What is the gain there?
Well, it's been actually happening, like, slowly and subtly
It
for a long
started
time.
off like the Aotearoa thing, trying to do that.
Yeah, and it was also just like the slowly, like, the treaty happened, and there was like two forms of the treaty. One was the English version, one was the Maori version. There was like mistranslations, and because we were now operating under this, like, legal crown-based system, they were able to use, like, loopholes in the system to be able to take land and, like, do all the land grabs and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff. So
yeah.
if you see the amount of land that the Maori had, like, 200 years ago compared to now, it's like we've lost heaps of land, you know, just
so
because
it's just a slow
it's a
trickle
slow
effect.
trickle effect, and that's why, like, things like this with, like, the cultural identity, like the changing of the principles, the changing of the principles, and like slowly taking away rights but like covering it up as like a positive thing that's supposed to be equality and stuff. That, you know, you see the effects of that 3 to 5 generations from now. It's like that's what creates the dying breeds.
That's what's been happening with everything though.
Yeah.
Instead, like I reckon they actually did a big mistake with COVID though, because that's what woke up majority of people. If they didn't do such a crazy thing and got caught for it, would still be getting slowly taken rights away, freedom away, a little bit of freedom here, a little bit of freedom there.
We would still be conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, we'd still be conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
like I reckon if it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't be at this level we're at now, with people like standing up for their rights.
Totally.
And like people coming together and
so many people we protested for, like everyone we met was like, this is our first protest.
It's
amazing, you know, and
but
it's
now,
like
it gives
you can
ground.
legally take off days off work to protest for your rights. Like you have those days locked in.
Yeah, it's cool.
And that's why I think, like, coming back, like, that's why I say, like, the political stuff, like, I'm not, like, I think politics is a lot of puppetry, and I think, like, both sides of the coin have been influenced by the powers that be, but I see the higher perspective, like, because the powers that control the world, they're not the superpowers of the universe. You know, like there's only one superpower of the universe, and that's where I seek to look at everything from. So like when you're looking at COVID and when you're looking at all this darkness coming to light, all these dark parts of society and human consciousness coming to our awareness, it's all a necessary thing. Just like we were talking about with the generational healing. How like the shit has to come up, we have to confront it, we have to transmute it, we have to transcend it. It's exactly the same on a global collective level.
Everything's all connected.
And I think it's a good thing for like the end result of culture, because I really do think people are screaming for culture. We really are. Like even when Tim says to me like, what is like a white New Zealander's, what's their food, you know, like say Māori is hangi, you know, Chinese, everyone's got their food. And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, it's probably pies. I'm like,
Fish and
like
chips,
we
bro.
have no
Chinese
culture if we don't like, you know, if we don't all come together, like there is no culture for a lot of people. And I enjoy the integrated culture of New Zealand.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. Like this, I mean, we could go into a whole like different rabbit hole around like where all the races come from and like why.
Africa.
We go down that rabbit hole and like looking at all the different the different root tribes in the world, like the original tribes, like where all the different races came from. And like the Pākehā people, they had culture at one point, but the difference with the Pākehā culture, and again, this is speaking from someone that's half, so it's not like any like racist stuff, but it was, a lot of it was just they went too far down the greed rabbit hole of just wanting to control everything, you know. And that's why like you see like all these different, like you look throughout history and you see like hundreds of thousands, millions of people have been conquered and killed as a result of that greed, but justified at the same time. And that's in politics, that's in religions, like it happens in religion as well. That's why like religion's a whole rabbit hole we could go into around like how that's contributed to colonization, because that's a big part of it, you know. So it's a big rabbit hole. And again, I practice a lot of critical thinking when talking about this stuff, and try and practice as much neutrality as possible, because there's value to be learned in both sides. Like when I went into my history and my genealogy of my colonial ancestors, I learned a lot from that. Like looking at like what was driving them, like what were they thinking, understanding them, you know, having compassion for them, even though there's a part of me that hates them, you know. And then going into my indigenous side, like what were they going through? Like they weren't perfect. They had their challenges. They weren't just like this like perfect pure race. Like they had all their own issues as well, you know. So there's always two sides to each coin. There's a hermetic principle that there's they're all truths are but half truths,
Yeah.
and there's a polarity and duality to everything, you know.
Well, this has been amazing.
We need to do another episode.
We're gonna have to do part 3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
just go down
have
rabbit
to.
holes, man.
We haven't even, I feel like
What
we've
is
just.
Because you know what did come up for me? I'm like, the first time we did Jesse, Kelly broke her leg, and I wasn't there.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
yeah,
like-
you weren't. Yeah.
The world doesn't want us to. Well, someone doesn't want us to get together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna do
Tell
it
the
again.
truth.
Nah, we definitely have to do it again, bro, because there's so much things I want to talk about, but
Yeah.
we've just run out of
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can find all Jesse's handles down below. We'll leave them in the description.
Yeah.
Don't forget to follow us and subscribe, like. We've got a lot of you watching without subscribing to us. And if you subscribe, it just helps our channel and gives us more opportunity, more guests. So, yeah. Thanks for coming along. This is a wild ride.
Thank you.
Thanks,
for tapping in.
Jesse.
See you later.
Peace.
Peace.
That could have gone for days.
Yeah, we made it in the end.